You're all welcome to the broadcast today, the tutorial, and without much waste of time, we're going straight to what we have today. We'll continue with the test function. We're going to give us one other test function today before we delve into our pivot tables and then whatsoever we have. So let's begin by knowing how we can convert a fraction, or rather, how we can convert a decimal into a fraction. Let's say you have 3.142 and you want to convert this to a fraction. What do you do? Simple. Use your test function equal to test, bracket open. The value is A7. You bring your comma, you bring your double quotation, and then you type your question mark / question mark. Then you close up with your double quotation, and then your bracket comes in, and you press enter. It's what is there writes 22/7 for you. 22/7. Now, there are instances where you really want it to be a mixed fraction. You know, you can convert 22/7 into a mixed fraction. So how do you do that? You go back to your formula. Zoom up. You go back to your formula. Look at how the formula looks, so simple. What's doing the fraction for this question mark? These two question mark. So when you now come before the question mark and you drop in shift 3, that's a hash, and you give a space and you press enter, it's what happens. It writes 3 whole number 1/7. Now we gave that space, to drop a gap between 3 and 1. This is in Excel. This is how we write fraction in Excel. You can as well, if the gap is too small for you, you can come between the hash sign and the question and add another space. When you press enter, you see that the space has increased. But I would like to leave it at just one space so that the gap will not be so much. Okay, let's have 4.237 equal to test function. The value is 88 space, bring your double quotation, and you have your hash sign space, and then you have your question, and then you drop your double quotation, close the bracket. It's what it gives us. It gives us 4 whole number 1/4. That's 4 1/4. So if I go back to this equation and I increase this question mark to 2, let them be 2, and I press enter, it's what happened. It's 4 whole number 9/38. Check the difference. Let me do Ctrl Z. We have 4 whole number 1/4. Now let me go further with the 4 whole number 9/38. So, but in a situation where you don't want this 4 whole number, what do? You simply come back, just do away with this hash. Simple. Press enter. It gives you 161/38. And when you come here, for instance, let's check whether what Excel did was actually correct. You can actually say, let's say we are doing a normal arithmetic. You have 161 divided by 38, and you press enter. You see what it gives you? 4 points. If you round this up, these 3 decimal places, if I reduce my decimal by 1, 2, I'll still get the same value. I think we're following. So this is how we work with test function to convert a particular thing we have into a decimal into a fraction. Okay, that's all for that. So let's go straight to our data, sales data, and see what we can do with our pivot table, continuation from what we did on our last study. All right, now let's watch it. I want to do a pivot table, and my pivot table will be having a column for year. You see, there's no column for year. So using the previous knowledge we had about using test function for year, what do we do now? You right click on this column, column B, insert table columns to the left. It brings out a new column, and this column I will give it year. I will name it year. Then come here, I will now use test function Just imagine if you were to use your hand and you manually put in 2013, 2015, 2014. It doesn't make sense. So use your test function. So equal to test, bracket open. What value is that? And A2. And mind you, when you are, this is a table. In our previous class, we converted it to a table, and the name of our table is sales table. So whenever you are working inside a table, when you are inputting a formula or some syntax, it doesn't call it A2. It will give you the name of the header, and the name of this header here is date. So when you see this, don't get confused. It doesn't stop you from doing what you want to do. So my value is this very one now that is found under your A2, that is found under your date column, date header. Sorry. Now, what do we do? Comma. Then how are you formatting the text? Mind you, bring your double quotation. How are you formatting it? Year is 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. You close your, and then bracket open. You press enter. It's what has happened. Because of your knowledge in test function, you see, just this formula I've done here, it has rolled down pulled out all the years for me. I don't need to bug myself about, picking them one after the other. So, and there's another thing I want us to do using our previous knowledge. That is using our if function. This is the age of the customers. But I want to do what we call age bracket. Age bracket. The years, if I'm going to work with the age in my pivot chart, it will be so spread out. I wouldn't like to have something so spread out. So I want to group the ages. How do I group the ages? What I call age bracket. Okay, let's go on. So let me right click here and insert a column. And the column, I will give it a name called, permit me to zoom this thing out so that we can get it bigger. We have age brackets. Or age bracket. Now, I'm going to put up a formula which I want to use for this age bracket using the if function. So we have our age bracket ready for us to fill it up with our formula and the age bracket. So let's go ahead to use our if statement to run that. Equal to if bracket open. There's a logical test. If it is less than or equal to 20, Excel should return the same less than or equal to 20. We close that. S, run around if statement. The same cell is now, if it's less than 31, Excel should return 21 to 30. Double quotation. S, Excel should run an if statement. The same value, if it is less than 41, Excel should return 31 to 40. Close up. Comma. Run around if false, run around if statement. This time around, if it is less than 51, what do we do? Excel should return 41 to 50. I think we're following what we're doing. As Excel should run an if statement. If the same value, the same cell is less than 61, Excel should return 51 to 60. Then we'll have one more to go. As if statement, if this same cell is now greater or equal to 61, Excel should return greater than or equal to 61. Then you close your bracket. How many brackets do you have? As you're closing it, you see it will be highlighting. If you let me place my cursor here. Immediately I first did the first closing, you see it gets bolding. When you do the another one, this very one will be bolding to show you that you are closing them. You are not done closing, so keep clicking and be watching. We are here now. It's running the last one. The last one is always black. So when you click, you have your black bracket. When you're done with this, if you're sure that everything is correct, just press enter. Wow, we've sorted out everything we need. You see what we've sorted out? All our age brackets have been featured, and they are very, very accurate. All right, now I think we are done with that. So let's see what we can play around with, because I need the age bracket and our year for whatever we're going to do. So just like I told you, this is your table. When you go to your design, the name of our table is sales data. Please, very, very important you know the name of your table, because of you'll be using that name in creating multiple pivot tables. So our next class, the next thing now, we'll be talking about pivot table, but not just one, but more than one pivot table. So let's head on to that. So first and foremost, you have your insert, go to pivot table, which is the sales data. Say okay. For this first one we're doing, computer is recognizing our sales data. So when you say okay, it brings you afresh to here. So we want to create 3 pivot table and see how we can play around with them. So the first pivot table, we are going to work with our revenue. Yeah, revenue, since it's a value, it goes straight to the values. And then we'll also be working with our country should be under the rows, and the state should also be under the country. And then we also want to work with the year. The year want it to be split into the columns. So the columns are here. Now you see that these things are expanded. So we need to collapse them. We only bring them up when you really need a particular one. So we need to collapse them. So how do we collapse them? I don't need, if in previous class we say you click here, you click, you keep clicking, but that's not the best. Since you have so many of them laid out, just right click on one, head on to expand or collapse. Then we are talking about collapsing. So don't just say collapse. Collapse will collapse only that current one. We'll say collapse entire feed. We'll now click on collapse entire feed, and you have it neatly done for you this way. From the previous class, I said we'll do away with the blanks so that we'll have a clean record. Now, having said that, this is a pivot table. So we would also want to create a pivot chart from this pivot table. Now, we are still under the pivot table tools, under the analyze. You head on to pivot chart. You click on pivot chart. Yes, I can use this column. If you want, you can use the bar. The bar is here. Anyone you want to use. For this lesson, use the column. I say okay. See, it comes here. Then you drag it and position it somewhere down there. You can drag it and position it. Give some space here. Why you give the space? So that whenever you are expanding any of the, let's say United States, you want to expand United States, when you click, you see, it goes so low below our chart. So it's always good, and most times you give space in between so that when you are expanding, you can visualize all the data. But for the purpose of this, let's not just, since we may not be collapsing, we may not be expanding. Let's just leave it here so that we can see how this thing plays out. So that we'll be seeing both our pivot tables, pivot table and pivot chart. So this is the first pivot table we have created with the pivot chart. So let's go on, give a space, a column, and then create another pivot table. So how do we do that? You go to insert and then go to pivot table. Now, this is the relevance of knowing the name of your table. Right there, they are asking you the name. So the name of my table is sales data. I will now say okay. it goes and pull out the information, the feeds from the sales data. But this time around, I will still need my revenue here, and I will need my product category and also the sub-category. You see, they are all expanded, so right click and then expand and collapse entire feed. So this also, why I'm still inside the pivot. Don't come outside before you say I want to add a chart. No, inside, while you click inside the pivot table, that's when you now go on to pivot chart, which is found under your analyze. You click on your pivot chart. You use the one you want. Maybe we can change it to bar, but let's use column chart. And I say okay. You can still carry it. Mind you, you can come head over here to resize it. You can resize it a bit so that it will not go far away from your pivot, what you have on your the value, the distance you have on your pivot table. All right, so let's continue. Let's leave this column M and insert another pivot table here. So right here under column N, we'll create the third pivot table. Go to insert, and then you have your pivot table. You type the name of the name of the table. Say okay. Now we'll be working with the year on the column, and then we'll be needing our revenue should be under the values. On your rows, we will need this time around the customer bracket, the age bracket first before the customer age down here. Then you can right click and collapse everything. Yeah, this is what we have. Yeah, using this, we'll also create a pivot chart with it. I think we'll use this also. Say okay, and we can expand this here. And to make it fill up the field, I can as well drag and position it properly. So that's that. So now, see what we have? We have the first pivot table with the chart, second pivot table with the chart, third pivot table with a chart. So now we have 3 pivot tables with their chart. You should know that these charts we've used are not just regular charts. These are charts that are displaying the visuals are based on the contents of the pivot table. They are not just regular charts, as we know. So, but before we continue, this whole work is not looking very clean. So let's just head on to our view and then turn off our grid lines. Let's uncheck the grid lines. So I'll have a plain white background. All right, I think we are good to go. So the question now is, how do we now interweave? How do we now connect these pivot charts together and the pivot tables together? How do we connect them together so that they will be, when you get a value from here, if you are working with those 21 to 30 years, as you're clicking, coming over here, they'll be telling us the accessories, the bikes, the clothing that those age groups, purchased, and and all these stuffs. So that's what we want to look at now. So there's something I want us to look at. This is the first time I'm mentioning it. We call it slicers. So we'll see how the slicers works. So let's click here. We're on the third pivot table, and we're going to bring up country. By country, I'm not going to drag it to any field here. I'm going to right click on country and tell it to add a slicer. I will click. It comes as slicer. Let me drag out and position it somewhere here. You see, because it's a slicer, see what has happened. All the countries are stated here: Nigeria, Germany, France, Australia, United Kingdom, and United States. Meaning that when I click Australia, you see, the cells comes up. When I click France, the sales comes up. When I click Germany, you see the whole stuff is changing, and it's so beautiful. United States. So without bugging yourself, without much difficulty, you could tell that United States, those from 31 to 40 years, I think from the observation here, they somehow topped the charts in 2016. 2016 the bar is growing. So that's the essence of pivot tables and pivot chart and Excel in its entirety. So these are country. So let's go and get another slicer, maybe for year. So we can right click and add year as slicer. So you can put it here too. And you see what has happened? I have Australia and I want the record for 2011. You see what has happened? Right on your pivot table, you have your 2011 here filtered very well. And over here, you still have your chart displaying 2011 data. And without difficulty, you could tell that, in 2011, the least in sales were from people that are, the age group that are greater or equal to 61, from what I'm saying here. The highest is the age group for 21 to 30. And it makes you to come up with decisions on the age group you should target next and for the next year. So that's the essence of chart and also pivot tables, as we can see here. Yeah, so we can resize it. These gaps are not necessary. So I can click and reduce it this way. We position it here. So I can also reduce this and make it smaller. So you can also reduce it, click and then reduce it from here. Then you can place them side by side this here. So these are your slicers. Now these slicers, to me, they are far. You can also look for a place. Let's look for a place and place them. Let them not be far away. So this slicer 1 for country, and then slicer 1 for year. So let them be under here. There's no problem. Now you've gotten your slicer. So let's reduce the zoom so that we can see what these things entails. So these are our work. These are the work we have here now. Okay, so we have three pivot tables with their charts, and you have a slicer. Now the problem, the question now is, how do we connect these things together? Having our slicers, how do we connect in such a way that whatever we are doing to this slicer is affecting all these charts? It's affecting the accessory buys and clothing. It's affecting also the states and these countries where those sales came from. Also, it's affecting the age group that purchased what in that particular year. How do we go about that? So you go to the first field. So you go to the first pivot table. You go to analyze. Go to filter connections. Then you check the country, which is the slicer or the filter. You also check the year. And you have done, this is a connection. You are connecting this pivot table to, this is called pivot table 6. They have their names written here. You connect it and say, okay, it's connected. You come also to the second pivot table. You go to the filter connection. You also check these two. You say, okay. Then you also head on. You also head on to this last one. You click on filter connections and okay, this one is already connected. That's the one we just did. Yeah, that is from here we did the two, so they're already on. And I say, okay. Now look at what will happen. If I click on 2011, what's going to happen? Let me click. So if I click on 2011, you see, it comes here and tells us the countries and the sales made in 2011. It gives us the charts. Coming over to here, it tells you that in this 2011 that you clicked under this very product category and subcategory, it's only bikes that were sold in that 2011. that made up, under here, it's only bikes that were sold that made up this 8964888. Then when you now come back to the age bracket, it now tells you the age bracket that bought what within that 2011. If you check their revenue, all are the same, to show you that these things are working together. Let's say, okay, now I want to look for 2011 and I want to check for Nigeria, what happened in Nigeria. You see, when I come to Nigeria, it will tell me, okay, Nigeria, look at the sales that were made. The revenue is 798 for Nigeria alone. And then we now have bikes that were sold. That 2011 is just this is the total, and this is it. And then we'll go on, and it tells us the age group or the age bracket that bought what? That bought the bike. Yes, the age bracket that bought that bike, because only bikes that was actually, so now if you want to know within this age bracket that is less than or equal to 20, if you, let me expand small, if you click on the plus, it tells you that the female actually bought 60,000 against the male. We use customer age. Yeah, it is customer age. I actually thought it's customer age. We're supposed to use customer age, but it's still okay. You can remove and add the customer age. I needed to put customer age, but I put customer gender. It's still okay. You can analyze and say, okay, since it's the females, under this age bracket, the females bought more. You can target the females in your nail sales. Not that you can target the male, but you can target more of the females. So you can collapse this, open the 21 to 30, and say, okay, here now, the females are lower in sales. They have 165, while the male 181. So when you come to this age bracket in your nail sales, you know who to target. So that's how we analyze data. So if I really want, the customer age can be pulled out, and then you bring in the customer gender can be pulled out. That's what I just pulled out. Then you bring in the customer age. It's what happened. When you expand this now, you see, it tells you that the people that bought more, 74,000 plus, is those 19-year-old. These things helps you, to advise on the target customer, the target customers or the target consumers that you really want them to get your product. So this is how we can work with pivot table and pivot chart. So as I explained to you now, all these things have been done. This Australia, this Nigeria, just like I told you, you want to compare between two, what I just did now, you have France, and you want to compare the sales in France and in Nigeria. So after clicking France, I hold my control key and click Nigeria. When I click Nigeria, it's what has happened. Everything is coming up. Then I will now say, no, I want for the year of 2011 and 2014 with my control key. It's what happened. It has brought out France and Nigeria, and the blue here, the blue bar, the blue column here represents 2011, and the orange or thereabout color represents 2014. And the whole thing explains things very clear to you. So if you want for only 2014, you click 2014. If you want for 2015, you click 2015, and everything lays out for you. So let me just click some stuff, and you see what I mean. This what's happening. 2016. Now 3 years, 2012, 2014. So with this, you can present your data very, very clear to any team or to your bosses at work whenever you are invited. So that is what we have for today. And feel free on the comment section of this video. On this video, you can ask your questions, and I'm ready anytime to answer you. Thank you so much, and see you in the next class.